Heyo everyone, Raf here from B&C Camera. Do you want your video to appear as epically professional as possible? It's tough, but here are some pointers to assist you in getting more cinematic footage. We've all had that experience. You're watching a movie or TV show and see a fantastic shot. How difficult could it be to duplicate that, right? You set up your camera and start filming, but the result doesn't seem like a true cinematic genius when you're wrapped up for the day. How come? Learning to make cinematic videos may be more complicated than you think, but don't worry, it's not impossible. After all, Orson Welles said he learned everything he needed to know to make Citizen Kane in only 45 minutes. The cinema tools aren't difficult to master, but how to use them to better tell your cinematic story. And that's going to be the tricky part. Today's video should get you on the right track to start thinking like a filmmaker, and thus putting yourself in the right headspace to create more cinematic images. We'll be dropping some grade A quality knowledge on you. In exchange, if you could do us a solid by subscribing and liking the video at the end, we would of course greatly appreciate it. And as always, to those other filmmakers out there watching this video, if you have some tips and tricks of your own, be sure to get that party started in the comments section down below. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. In today's video, I'll go over our itinerary plan to cinematic video filmmaking success block by block, providing the knowledge drop along the way. Our first stop, which is giving some thought to your images. Why exactly are these the images you're capturing, and are you using the right equipment for the job? Before you start filming, one of the simplest things you can do is prepare, plan, and plan some more. Things won't turn out well if you just grab your camera and press the record button. Believe it or not, you don't have to wait until the day of the shoot to begin thinking about and designing your shots. Will it be a shallow depth of field, or will you be filming in direct sunlight? This means that you either have to close down your aperture or use an ND filter to capture that creamy background in such an overexposed environment. It sounds funny, but thinking is one of the most essential parts of cinema. You're not just a shooter, you're a designer and a storyteller. Stop number 2, shoot and edit in 24 frames per second. This is ultimately an arbitrary rule, but an important one. 24 frames per second became the industry standard when sound entered movie making. The least amount of frames, and therefore film stock, could be used to synchronize and record audio of dialogue to the actors' mouths. But it's the frame rate that we've been watching now for over 100 years. It mimics motion blur similar to how our eyes perceive it, and it's one of the fundamental and subconscious technical decisions that make cinema feel like cinema. And here we are at number 3, which is 180-degree shutter angle. Now some people may be unsure what a shutter angle is, but it's similar to shutter speed. A shutter angle of 180 degrees implies that your shutter speed is twice that of your frame rate. When you shoot at 24 frames per second, your shutter speed should be at 1/48 of a second. Again, this has a lot to do with making motion in camera look like it does to the human eye, and it's a look that has become synonymous with proper movie making. Number 4, pick a purposeful aspect ratio. It boils down to real films once again. The aspect ratio of a big screen movie is 2.35 to 1, and your computer screen is 16:9, maybe even 16:10 depending on its size. Even if you have to fake it with a crop, converting your film from a standard widescreen to the ultra-wide experiential aspect ratio of big movies helps immerse the viewer. Number 5 is going to be music, so be sure to pick some killer tunes to fit the mood. Music is so essential to making your footage sing. Music is very emotional and can put your audience in the right mood and mindset. Be careful not to use it as a crutch though, as not even the best song can save a bad shot. And be cautious when looking for music. Some of it can be very expensive, and free alternatives usually don't capture the atmosphere you're going for. Consider helping out a fellow artist and collaborating with a musician or composer. Stop number 6 is pretty essential. Move the camera, but only when it's motivated. Dollies, tripods, jibs, cranes, and gimbals are all expensive equipment that filmmakers use to move their cameras. You don't need to spend money you don't have, and it isn't necessary to shoot a cinematic video on a budget. It simply boils down to thinking before shooting. The goal is to achieve smooth, gradual, and deliberate motions. Learn how to take cinematic photographs like the big boys using a fluid head tripod or a budget gimbal. And our final stop for cinematic video capturing success, develop your skills as a color grader. The last suggestion is to color correct your footage until you can afford a colorist. Have you ever noticed how films like The Matrix prefer the color green? Or Wild West movies have a more yellow-brown tint? While color grading and correction are distinct industries in and of themselves, even if you're not an expert in editing software, programs like DaVinci Resolve, you can improve your footage by learning the basics. Overall, the name of the game is to get as much right in camera as possible. Editing software has come a long way in terms of sophistication and affordability. But if you want to shoot like the pros, do your best to create thoughtful images with your most important tool, which of course is the camera. And so concludes our little world tour for cinematic video success. Hope you found the ride enjoyable and enlightening. Oh, one last tip. Watch and learn from the films you love. Sometimes creating cinematic footage is a process of reverse engineering. Watch a scene you love, deconstruct it, and then build it back up all over again. There's absolutely nothing wrong with taking inspiration from what you love. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, after all. Even so, once you've taken that inspiration to your own, it eventually blossoms and flourishes into something completely unique to you, which will set you apart as a filmmaking creative. Thanks again for joining us on this journey. This is Raph from BNC Camera, and we'll catch you on the next informative adventure. See ya.